The problem is that YouTube is probably the largest streaming music platform in the world, and yet it pays, so it almost has 60% market share on streaming music, and yet it pays less than 11% of the revenues into the streaming music business. So it's essentially a free rider. The second problem is that artists have no right to take their content down. They can monetize their content through Content ID, but they have no right to actually have it off completely from the platform. So it essentially puts every piece of content out online for free, against which Spotify or Apple Music can hardly compete. And so it essentially debases the whole music. So for instance, if you were successful enough to get 1 million downloads on iTunes, you, the artist or the record company, could make $900,000. If you had 1 million streams on YouTube, you would make $900. So that 1,000 times difference is the problem with the system.
And the other streaming services, the Spotify's, Pandora's and others, they've reached what appears to be reasonably equitable arrangements with the rights holders, and it's a whole new revenue stream and everybody's making some money. But your contention is that YouTube is just not doing that fairly.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I would argue that Spotify has 2 levels of payment. One is the payment for its premium service, where someone subscribes for $10 a month to the service. And the payments that come out of that for an artist are reasonable. They're not great, but they're reasonable. The payments that come out of their ad-supported service are still very small. They're like 0.004 cents, so 4/100ths of a cent per play. I don't think that's going to make anybody a lot of money. And the reason that's so low is, of course, is that YouTube sits out there for free. And Spotify had told the music industry that by this point in their evolution, 75% of their customers would be on the premium service. It's more like 25%.
Now, YouTube says that it does monitor those things and it does take down content that is illegal or breaches copyright or whatever.
Not true. If I'm an artist and my song gets put up by a YouTube user, I can file a takedown notice, and that content will eventually come down. It could go up the next day, but it's from other user. And of course, in the US at least, YouTube has what's called a safe harbor. So I, the content rights holder, cannot sue YouTube for that content because they pretend like it's just the users. But all the while, they're monetizing from advertising. Now, I can ask for the advertising money from that content, but that's like, I've got a gun to my head, so you want some money for this? And I don't think that's not fair dealing.
Yeah, a lot of YouTube users, as you say, will rip the audio out of a song and put the picture of the album cover up there and just load it up. Nobody's there to stop them, and unless you discover it and ask for it to be taken down, it sits there on YouTube.
Right. And if you ask for it to be taken down, it gets taken down, it could go up the next day from someone else.
Did you say, you mentioned some figures about how much of YouTube's content is music streaming?
I think it's a huge proportion. I don't know what the latest figures is, but it's a very large proportion.
Something around half?
Well, yeah. I mean, all I know is that almost 55% of all streaming music comes off of YouTube.
So in America, those various laws, safe harbor laws, protect YouTube. But this is Australia, and there are other jurisdictions, particularly Europe, looking at different laws and ways to force YouTube to do the right thing.
Well, my new book called Move Fast and Break Things proposes that we have a strict take down, stay down law, which would then allow the musician to make the choice of whether their song was on a streaming platform or not. In fact, some artists like Adele or Taylor Swift or Beyonce have found that they sell more if they don't go on streaming platforms. And so they spend hundreds of thousands of dollars constantly taking this stuff down so that at least they can have the illusion that they're only available on the paid platforms. But that would be a good strategy called windowing, and it should be one that should be able to be pursued by everyone, not just the incredibly rich artists.
You worked in the music industry yourself with Bob Dylan?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Well, I was a tour manager for Bob Dylan and the band in the late 1960s and early 70s. Went to the Isle of Wight, did hundreds of concerts, and it was a great experience. They were great artists, to me, the possibility of having kind of middle-class artists like the band are what interests me, and now it's becoming very hard. You either have people who are doing incredibly well or people who can't make a living.
In fact, you mentioned a friend of yours who was making reasonable money from royalties until everything changed.
His name was Lee Von Helm. He was the drummer in the band. He did very well. I mean, didn't make a lot, but he made $100,000 a year. And then Napster came, and that all stopped. And he got throat cancer at the exact time that happened. And so, he died penniless, basically.